I am still, I guess, Suke, taken aback a little bit when the thing that leads or breaks the news is the passive-aggressive unfollowing of a franchise.
Yeah,
the fact that, like, that's the news signal that stuff's about to go down.
100%.
And it's so strange.
It really is. But we're living in a world of social media where these kids,
I get it. It just feels weird.
They're raised on. Yeah, you see it all the time. And my favorite is like then they get mad when people, like, they unfollow and they erase all forms of the team, and then someone asks them about it, and then they get all butthurt. I call that the LeBron. Yeah. When they get all pissed that someone asked them about it, like, what are you talking about? Like,
by the way,
you removed all mentions of your team. I don't know what you're talking about.
By the way, did you see the LeBron Q&A over the weekend when he was asked about if next year is your final season, do you think you'll have one of those farewell tours?
Oh,
and he said, I've never really been about getting that much attention. I'm kind of 50-50 on that.
Yeah,
Do you believe that for a second?
I didn't see the clip, but I saw the quote. Yeah, he said he wasn't certain because he wasn't comfortable with the attention.
Right.
You have chosen one tattooed on your back, dumbass. God, if someone breathes on you, you fall down for 10 minutes. And I love LeBron. Like, LeBron's amazing. I'm not a LeBron hater, but my God, you don't like attention? Okay.
Uh-huh. Well, anyhow, we'll kick it back over to the NFL, but we have the unfollowing of the Chicago Bears from Justin Fields, and now all signs are pointing to the Georgia boy going back home, at least to the area that he grew up in, to be the quarterback of the franchise he grew up rooting for. Interestingly, someone pointed out on the text line last week when there were first rumblings of either Fields or maybe Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh, that how welcoming would Georgia or would Atlanta be of Fields, who left the University of Georgia? But I think if he can play QB in the NFL, they'll be just fine.
No one cares.
Of course not.
You think Falcon fans are going to care if Justin Fields goes down there and actually can get the ball to Drake London or Pitts?
And that's not the real story here. The real story is what happens in the quarterback landscape of the NFL. Because now it seems like we probably have our first two moves. Yeah. We see Fields to the Falcons, which is the signal that it's also going to be Caleb Williams to the Bears.
Yeah. And so then the dominoes can start going off of that, because you think about it, we still need a landing spot, obviously, because there's lots of quarterback questions, right? So with the Fields one answered, what happens with Baker Mayfield? Mm-hmm. I'm assuming Tampa is going to keep him and pay him. Obviously, you can, the franchise tag and all that, but they're going to do Antonio Winfield, so he's not going to be franchise tagged. So what does Baker get? I'm assuming that Tampa can't do any better than that, and they're going to bring him back. Arizona with a decision on Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins, who's the other one? Tannehill. I mean, there's a couple other guys that are kind of up in the air. Uh-huh. But you look at the top of the draft, if we're going to assume that Caleb Williams goes 1, 2, and 3 will probably be quarterbacks. Because you look at Washington and you look at New England, that you're probably going to get Drake May or Jaden Daniels. I've seen a lot of Jaden Daniels to Washington. Sure. And then you're sitting there at Arizona at 4. Do you get a run? Because Arizona more than likely doesn't get rid of Kyler Murray.
It sounds like they want to see if Kyler can do this.
Well, and Kyler, just the dead cap hit on him would be enormous. And then the Chargers don't need one. Right. And then you get to the Giants. What do they do with Daniel Jones? And then you get to Tennessee, and they've got they've got Will Levis. You think they're going to give Levis a little bit of time. And then you get to Atlanta, who probably has Justin Fields, and then Chicago, and then the Jets that doesn't need a quarterback. So this is where it gets interesting is there's probably 5 first-round quarterbacks if you're going to take Nix and you're going to take Penix, right? So if we go 1, 2, 3 quarterback, there's a lot of potential there for trades at that point if you see some people that feel the need to want to move up, or do one of those teams land more of a veteran quarterback, a Cousins.
And is he the best out there in your opinion of the guys who are available potentially as a free agent?
I would assume so. I mean, if Baker's out there, Baker doesn't have the injury history. Doesn't sound like Tua's going to go anywhere in Miami. Yeah. They're going to hold on to him. But I'm interested to see Tua about what they get paid. Baker Mayfield had a good year.
He did.
And Tua had a good year. Daniel Jones gets $43 million. Yeah. I would assume it starts there. And I like Baker, and I like Cousins, and I like Tua. What I don't like him at is $48 million. And if Daniel Jones is sitting there at 43, I would love Baker Mayfield, and I would love Tua, and I would love Cousins at 30 to 35. Do they take 30, 35? Is there a market out there for them at 40? That's what I didn't understand about the Daniel Jones thing. Who is giving Daniel Jones $40 million?
They bid against themselves on that one. I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, it's very confusing to me. And we forgot to mention Russell Wilson's out there too. That Russ is going to end up somewhere as well.
So does this mean Russ Pittsburgh?
That seems to make sense because
that seems like a fit.
If Fields to Pittsburgh, because that was kind of one that people were pushing, but now obviously Atlanta is now people are like, oh, Atlanta. If that doesn't work out, then Fields to Pittsburgh's in play. But if it does, then yeah, it makes sense. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to go ahead with Kenny Pickett, and I don't think Pittsburgh is in the market to go young.
Right.
I don't think if you're Pittsburgh, because they draft like 20th.
Yeah.
You could make the argument that Penix or Nix would be there at 20. You'd probably feel better about moving up in the draft. You willing to move up and get draft capital up to draft Penix or Nix?
McCarthy, maybe.
Yeah, McCarthy's another one.
Yeah, he's a guy I've seen thrown out there, even in the top half of the draft.
Mel Kiper had him in his top 10.
I saw him at 8 to the Falcons.
Boy, I'll tell you what, it's a ballsy move because
I would not want him to be my franchise QB.
He's one of those guys that you're betting on that he played in a system that held him back. And that he'll blossom at the next level. I think he would be harder to evaluate than just about any of those other quarterbacks. Yeah, you could get 6 first-round quarterbacks. So if you're at Pittsburgh, are you willing to roll the dice and go young, or do you roll the dice on Russ? But yeah, it feels like if Fields goes, Baker, Russ, and Cousins would be the 3 veteran guys if Mayfield can't work something out with Tampa that are all. Russ, you see what he has left in the tank, but Mayfield and Cousins, especially Cousins coming off a bad injury, when healthy, every one of those guys is a top 14, 15 quarterback in the league, right in there.
Yep.
So for a team like Pittsburgh, it would make a lot of sense.
And then the other thing I saw that I'm curious if you agree with, because obviously New England needs a quarterback, and I wish I could give it credit to whoever it was, but the analyst was evaluating New England and their draft spot, saying that New England as a franchise right now is a whole lot closer to Carolina than they are to Houston as far as like needing a quarterback in last year's draft.
Yes.
And that their roster may not be ready for a rookie quarterback because they might not have the pieces yet. Is it possible that they may try to go with a vet? And if so, does that allow one of those top quarterbacks to fall down the rankings? And I was just interested in the person was kind of saying that New England's not New England anymore. They don't have, the cupboard's kind of bare, and it doesn't have the aura. Like they need more than just the QB.
Well, if you're New England, you have to make it, and this is where you just never know what's happening inside an organization. Because you could make a strong case that if I'm Gerard Mayo, I'm the new coach, I go to Robert Kraft. And remember, they did this with San Francisco when they hired Shanahan and Lynch. Mm-hmm. They gave them like 5-year deals, and we're like, hey, man, you're going to get some runway here. Mm-hmm. If I'm Mayo and you're willing to do this, you go to Kraft and be like, hey, you're committed to me, right? We're not doing this one and done Raheem Morris crap, right? I'm here.
And I don't think Kraft wants to do that.
I wouldn't imagine. He seems like, and by all accounts, he's one of the best owners in the NFL.
And by all accounts, they've been getting Mayo ready for this job.
Yes. So if New England were and it may not be popular amongst fans in New England, but if Daniels and Caleb Williams go 1-2, and you're sitting there with Drake May and you're New England, there is a real element to, can you get a couple ones for someone to move up into the 3rd spot and take Drake May?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you move down, and I wouldn't even necessarily bring in a veteran. If you do bring in a veteran, you don't bring in a good one.
You don't have to bring in Cousins.
No.
Yeah.
Because New England's not ready for a bridge quarterback either. Mm-mm. Pittsburgh's ready for a bridge quarterback.
Yes.
Tampa was ready for a bridge quarterback, right? Like Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins was healthy, that's where I'd go if I were Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Baker and Kirk can win you playoff games.
Absolutely. And that was a roster that got close to the playoffs again last year.
Yes. So if you're New England, probably the best thing for you, if you don't believe that Drake May is the guy, but I'll go to my grave. If you think Drake May or Jaden Daniels, who's ever there at 3, if you think they are a franchise,
you got to go get him.
You don't give 2 S's about what's around. Draft him.
Yeah, you need to make sure he doesn't go to the next franchise.
Yes.
Yeah,
if you think you're as a franchise guy, see Pat Mahomes in Kansas City, they had Alex Smith, and it was like, nope, we're going to trade up because we think this is the guy. If you ever think that there is a franchise quarterback, you pull the trigger. If you look at Drake May and you're like, yeah, we like him, but there's nothing special about him. Move down, stick with Mac Jones.
Get more capital. Let someone else take the guy. Yeah.
Take another hit and accept the fact that you're going to kick rocks for the next year or two and you keep going. But that takes patience. Tanking works. It does.
Yep. It does.
Tanking works. Chicago has kind of done this, and Fields hasn't been very good, and they've traded back, and they've got all this draft capital, and they've got a chance to walk away with now. Let's say they get another one for Justin Fields. They have a chance to walk away with Caleb Williams. Let's say you probably don't get Marvin Harrison Jr. at 9, but maybe Neighbors
or Odunze.
Yeah.
To go along with DJ Moore. And then you get another first round pick or a late second, and you draft another starter with that. This is how you build. In Chicago kind of took their lumps. And so if you're New England and you're patient, you don't have to draft a quarterback at 3 if you aren't in love with him.
Yeah.
It's just that most franchises, most coaches, most GMs never feel comfortable doing that. See Carolina, like in Frank Reich. But good organizations give their coaches and gives their GM leeway to kind of go through this and acquire picks and wait until you get a quarterback that you're really in love with. But make no mistake, in the NFL, if you think a guy is a franchise quarterback, you do whatever you can to get your hands on him. And don't ever listen to anyone that says that they're an expert in the draft when it comes to quarterbacks, because you don't know what someone thinks of a quarterback in a room.
Right.
Because that's all that matters.
Yep.
And again, go back to Pat Mahomes, where everyone was like, why the hell is Kansas City moving up to take him?
Numbers weren't that good. Didn't win that many games. They had a reason.
When you see a guy, you go out and you get him and you pull the trigger and hope that your evaluation is right. Because if you're wrong, you look like an ass clown. If you're wrong, you end up with Mitch Trubisky. If you're wrong, you end up with Jake Locker. On and on and on. But when you're right and you end up with CJ Stroud, look at Carolina right now. They're sitting there with Bryce Young, and Houston sitting there with CJ Stroud. One was right, one was wrong.
Yep. Absolutely.
And it tips. Those two franchises couldn't be on different trajectories.
And they looked like they were parallels the year before.
They both were crappy franchises that people were like, and one made a great hire as a coach, and one made a great pick at quarterback, and the other one fired their coach, and they've got what appears to be maybe the worst number one quarterback we've seen. It's early. This may be, if this is what it is going forward from Bryce Young, not only is this potentially going to be the worst number one pick we've seen since like Jamarcus Russell, this may set back the Short Kings for years.
Well, they also didn't help him at all.
No, but when you draft someone small and it fails, and already, I mean, there are some guys that will go to their grave saying, I won't draft a quarterback under 6 foot, period, end of story. I don't care. I'm not taking him. And all it takes is one to be like, oh, this is the exception, and him for being a bust for the rest of the NFL to look at and be like, yeah, remember I was really set in my not drafting 5'9", 5'10" skinny quarterbacks. Bryce Young's got the ability to set back the Short Kings for years and years and years, unless he can figure something out, because it's bad. This is as bad of a early quarterback as we've seen in a long, long time.